Okay, so we got our colors. I'm gonna turn this over because it's just a scrap piece of watercolor paper to test my colors before I put it on my painting. And I have my reference laying over here. You guys don't really need to see that. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm gonna start on this section of the Seagull. And it's kind of a gray blue fading into almost just like a gray at the bottom, okay? So I'm gonna get some of the paint that we mixed earlier. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna start by laying down your paint and then pull down. And what you wanna do with watercolor is you wanna keep a wet edge as much as you can. So I'm gonna come back with my water and just keep that edge wet. As I pull down, it's gonna get lighter. That's what the reference shows. So I'm adding water. You can use a piece of tissue or paper towel to control the water on your brush. Okay, there's like a darker area that comes from about here. It goes up. And I'm just using water, you guys, to soften the edge. But I want that kind of to stay like a hard edge, but maybe slightly softer. Okay, and then let's just let that dry. Come back over, we're gonna come to the feathers, and I do my best, you guys, to keep my hand out of the way. I have a hard time painting so that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm gonna start with the very tip of my brush, and I'm just gonna pull down, okay, to kind of follow. And make sure that your brush, see how it's kind of it's thin right there and thick right there? You wanna pull along the thin edge, all right? And kind of keep going, don't stop. And I wouldn't try not to worry too much if it doesn't look exactly like the reference. It's okay. It's your painting. It might look a little different, and that's okay. So. The feathers get much lighter after these first three, but they also have like a darker part on the end, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that in. Okay, and then just to make it lighter, you're just gonna add water. Okay, and And so then I'm just going to come in with the rest of these feathers. Okay, now on this edge right here, you want to make sure this stays white. And then the feathers are going to come this direction, and it's just that medium gray blue again. Just remember, you know, check your colors as you paint. Leave this white, and then we're going to come back in here with a darker gray blue. And then a lighter blue again. And it's okay if some of these blend a little. When you touch that edge, it's still wet, so it's gonna kind of blend a little bit, and that's actually what you want. So switch brushes. So watery, you guys, it's basically like painting with water. That's how much water is on my brush right now. And don't worry, we'll come back in. You can come back in and layer and get a little bit more shading in there. And we'll put in those black spots that you see in the reference. Okay, I'm gonna come on down over here and let that dry for a little bit. Again, this is super light blue that we're using down here. This part's gonna stay white, and then you're just gonna get some blue, very light blue in here, as well as very light blue here. So these two are white. Whenever you see white in watercolor paint, that's paper shows through. You never use white paint, because what happens is it destroys the translucency of the paint. When you guys trace onto your watercolor paper, trace very lightly if you can. I did a little bit darker so that you could see, but you want to try doing it as lightly as you can, okay? All right, and I'm going to come in with that tan that we made along its body. Just a little bit, and it's going to follow the curve of the bird, okay? And this is called a lift-off technique, when you're just lifting off some of the paint that you put down while it's still wet. And that's a great technique to learn. I'm gonna come on in and start doing its feet, which is this brown that we made using yellow and red and a little bit of black. I could come back in and define that a little bit better, but right now I'm going to come in and do the beak. Probably I can add a couple more of the detail lines of in the lower feathers. Very light. Okay, so basically guys, I'm gonna soften this edge and then I'm gonna let it dry for a little bit. Just gonna soften. So I'm just using water right now. Softening the edge on here, pulling it up. Okay, I'm gonna let this dry and then we're gonna come back in and we're gonna add some details. Okay, so our Seagull is dry, and so now this is kind of the fun part, but you have to be careful not to do too much at this point because you're just adding details at this point. You're not going to use a lot of water. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go for it. I'm going to use like some of the darker brown that we made, and look, I mean, just look how little paint I'm using, you guys. It's so subtle. That's the thing about watercolor that you want to remember. I'm going to come back in and I'm just going to redefine some of these areas. I'm going to redefine some of these areas now that they're dry, and so we're not going to be smearing our paint. Okay, let's see where else do you want to come in, and I'm going to do a little bit of detail in the wings over here. I'm just going to follow kind of my lines that I drew. This way it's also covering up any of the pencil lines, which is what you want to do. And then I'm just going to kind of swipe through. You want it to stay pretty subtle, guys, so don't go crazy on this part, okay? Although I will say, you can't really, I mean, whatever. You can't screw it up. It's just all a learning process, so even if it's not exactly the way you want it, when it's done, you're gonna learn something and take it on to your next painting. So try not to stress out if it doesn't come out exactly the way you want it to. Okay, so there. There's a few kind of like feathery things coming down from here that I want. And then, so there's a little bit of blackish brown, like blackish blue on the end of these wings. again, like I said before, it doesn't have to match the reference exactly. The more you can start to make these paintings your own, the better. So, okay. Now I'm going to add the detail in the beak. The line art of the seagull for this tutorial is available on A Space to Create Art on my Teachers Pay Teachers store. Head on over there if you're interested. Otherwise, just follow the video tutorial and have fun creating. This video was created by Sabrina Wingren at A Space to Create Art.